Hey, what is up guys? Welcome back to another video, and in this video we're going to be continuing on with our iOS development with UIKit tutorial series, and in this particular tutorial we are going to be taking a look at how we can present and customize sheets in UIKit. Now, at the end of this video, I'm also going to issue you a challenge, because this challenge is going to be very similar to what we're doing in this video, but instead of sheets, I want you to take a look at popovers and experiment to figure out how to present a popover instead of a sheet. More on that at the end of the video. So, in UIKit, we didn't used to be able to customize the sizing of our sheets. A good example of Apple being able to do this before we could is in Maps. So in Maps, they used to have what's called a bottom sheet, and we couldn't do that because that API to do that was a private API that only Apple had access to. Well, now they've made access to that API public for all of us to use. This was done a couple years ago, so it is a new-ish API in comparison to how long UIKit has been around. So, let's go ahead and get started by taking a look at the application that we're going to be working with today. So in the simulator, right now I have an application where the background color is gray. Now this is simply to give you a visual indicator as the background dims when a sheet is presented, so you know exactly, oh hey, there is a sheet here. Alright, in the middle of this view there is a button that says tap me. When this button is tapped, what we're going to do is we're going to present another view controller as a sheet. As of right now, the button does nothing. Alright, so if we go back into Xcode, the first thing that we are going to want to do is inside of main VC, inside of the action method that we have for our tap me button, we are going to say present sheet VC animated true. So we want this screen when we present our sheet VC, we simply want this to be animated. So we know exactly. So we're not being jarred, I guess, would be the best way to put that. Now, if you have reduce motion enabled, that might be false, right? You might want to set that to false, but for now we're going to leave that as true. Alright. Now, let's go ahead and create that object so Xcode doesn't yell at us. Let sheet VC equals sheet VC, like that. And there we go. Now when we run our code, here we are in our application. Let's hit the tap me button. Now, our sheet is presented with presented sheet as a label in the center of its view. That is precisely what we wanted to happen. However, we want this to be presented slightly differently, instead of just calling present. So back in Xcode, I'm going to jump to definition of this class. All right. And then inside of our configure method, inside of this sheet VC class, we are going to configure what's called a UISheetPresentationController. Now, with a UISheetPresentationController, you do not create instances of this class manually on your own. What you do instead is you get the presentation controller property of the controller that's being presented, and then you cast that to a UI sheet presentation controller, and you customize that object from there. Now, because presentation controller, this property, is optional, it can be nil. So we have to safely unwrap this property before we can use it. So let's go ahead and say if let presentation controller equals presentation controller as question mark. So we need to use as with a question mark to unwrap it safely here. And then we'll say UI sheet presentation controller. And inside of the block, the code block for this, we have an unwrapped UI sheet presentation controller instance that we can modify. So the first thing that we're going to talk about here are detents. Now, what are detents? Well, the different kinds of detents available for sheets in UIKit is exactly how we specify the sizing of our sheet. You can have a large sheet, which is the default. You can have a medium sheet, which goes about halfway up the height of the screen. And then if you want, you could create your own custom detents. So you have, for example, custom heights and stuff like that. Large and medium are the only available pre-configured detents. So keep that in mind. If you need something smaller, you're going to have to create a custom detent. But to customize this, we're going to say presentation controller dot detents equals an array of the different detents that we want our sheet to be configurable with. Now, when it comes to this property's value, you have to keep in mind that the first value in the array here is always going to be the default value that gets used. So you could say large and then medium, where large will be the initial value, and then you can make it smaller to a medium-sized sheet. Or you can have medium as the first, then large, and make the medium-sized sheet the default. It really depends on what you want to do. You can also have only one detent in this array to make sure that it can't be resized. But I will show you having two in here, the medium and large, so you can change the size if you want. We'll have dot medium and dot large, just like that. Exactly how we would specify elements in an array normally. There are many other properties that you can work with here. So if we say presentation controller dot, we worked with detents. There is a selected detent identifier property, and what this property allows you to do is it allows you to retrieve the current detent of your sheet, but it also allows you to programmatically change the size of your sheet if you need to do that. there is a delegate method or a delegate property, which you can use if you want, but it's not technically required. Now, largest undimmed detent identifier. What this property does is that pretty much this property will allow you to specify or retrieve what the largest sheet detent size is available that does not dim the background when the sheet is presented. Now, prefers grabber visible is a Boolean that allows you to specify whether or not you want a sheet grabber to be visible when the sheet is presented. This is particularly useful to add additional what are called affordances to the user. And what affordances are is pretty much some kind of indicator on what you could or should do with something in the user interface. So in this case, a grabber would let the user know, hey, you can resize this or use this grabber to dismiss the sheet. That is generally what it means. So if you want a grabber to be displayed, set this property to true. If not, set it to false. You can set the corner radius of the sheet. You can say prefers edge attached in compact height. And so what this pretty much does is it basically says, hey, in compact heights, do I want the sheet to be attached to the bottom of the screen? There's preferred page sizing, and this property basically says, hey, I want this sheet to size itself based on its content. And there's all kinds of properties that you can deal with here. Those are just a few of them. We'll say I want, let's say prefers grabber visible. We'll set that to true. Right, and there we go. Now we have our UISheetPresentationController configured. And that's all we need to do, really, to configure our sheet. Let's go ahead and run our app now and see what happens. All right, we have a successful build. So here we are in our application. Again, we have our button in the center with a gray background. The button says tap me. We click on the button. And now, not only do we see the background is dimmed, but we also get our sheet about halfway up the screen here. And we can see our grabber as well. So we can tap that and drag it to make our sheet larger or smaller or dismiss it entirely. And then you can also tap outside of the sheet to dismiss it. All right. So I'm going to tap outside of our sheet here, and it's gone. All right, so that is how we can present and customize sheets in UIKit. Now, I mentioned in the beginning of the video that I wanted to give you guys a challenge, and that's true. So the challenge I want to give you guys at this moment is there is another kind of modal view controller presentation called a popover. Now, popovers, in essence, allow you to display short little blurbs of information about something or an action. They aren't meant for dense information. For more about that in particular, you can look at the popovers section in the human interface guidelines. I'll leave a link for that in the description so you can take a look at it. But what I want you to do is read the documentation for UI Popover Presentation Controller. It's a long name, I know. And use that to figure out, use that and the stuff we learned here today to figure out how you summon a popover as opposed to a sheet. I will leave links in the description for the documentation for not only UI Sheet Presentation Controller, but also UI Popover Presentation Controller, so you have all the context you need to be able to solve this challenge and learn something on your own along the way. All right, thank you guys so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.